Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Live with NORML. I'm JM Padini, the Development Director for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. It's Friday, October 4th, 2024. You know what that means, friends. It's time for me to answer all of your burning questions live. We're going to cover the latest and greatest in cannabis policy and science news for the week. I'm going to answer your questions. You're going to tell me where you're watching from. Drop a note in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from. And hey, thanks for taking time out for Friday afternoon to hang out with us here at Live with NORML. Wherever you're watching from, please take a minute, hit that like, follow, or subscribe button so you never miss when NORML goes live. Hey Nick, happy Friday to you in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. He's Samuel. He's Silent Type in Colorado Springs. Hey everyone who just joined us on Instagram. Let's get down to it. I hope you're well out there in North Carolina. Samuel, how was it for you? Hey Troy in Wisconsin. What's going on in Wisconsin? So let's get right into some news there. Oh. All right, Bruce. Bruce, I don't think you should be telling your friends to vote no on Amendment 3 in Florida, and here's why. Does it do everything that we would hope it would do? No, because it can't. Because there are restrictions on the number of issues that can be included in the constitutional amendment when it appears on the ballot. That's why it's so narrow. And here's the thing. 60,000 people are arrested in Florida every year for weed. So if we can end that, it's an extraordinary step forward. You can pass legislation to legalize personal cultivation, but it's going to be a lot easier to do that if you've already baked legalization into your constitution in the Sunshine State. So vote yes on 3. End 60,000 arrests a year. That's huge. Hey, Ben in Redondo Beach. Thanks for coming back, friend. Good to see you. Happy Friday, Ryan. I mean, look, it doesn't have anything to do with corporate greed, Ben, Bruce. It has to do with how many things can go in to the constitutional amendment. It's not my spiel. It's how things work. It's like elections have consequences, and you have a bunch of wackos in the Florida. I mean, I could have said Virginia as well, but in the Florida legislature who aren't doing their job and upholding the will of the voters. So you're putting it on the ballot. Like, that's good that you have that option in Florida. It's terrible that it has to be a constitutional amendment. Like, letting the perfect be the enemy of the good is a lose-lose situation. I don't know what you mean, Randy. Hey, friends who just joined us on Instagram, I see you. Tell me where you're watching from. Right, let's get into some news while you all ask me your burning questions. Drop them in the comments. Samuel. Oof. Samuel, I'm glad that you're okay in North Carolina. And that's really terrible to hear about the flood and the damage to your town. But I'm glad you're okay. Even if your garage is not. Glad that's separate. Oof. Hey, let's go with some actual questions about like current cannabis policy today. That'd be good. Let's talk about those things. I'm not answering weird stuff like that. Hey, Fred. Happy harvest season to you. Croptober, right? All right, let's get into some news. Okay, this week, well, it was actually, yeah, it was this week. On Monday, was it Monday? The calendar's not even on the right month. Good grief. On Monday, NORML filed our notice of intent to participate in the DEA marijuana rescheduling hearing. Oh, why don't I share that blog with you? You can read all about it on the NORML blog. Chris, I like your comment. I'm going to address that in just a hot second. NORML has participated in the majority of rescheduling hearings, and we'd like to participate in this one as well. But just because we filed the intent to participate does not mean that we will be allowed to participate. It means we're asking to, but we did file that. Okay, Chris says DUI by cannabis should be deleted. Yes and no. So first of all, I'm going to say this. Please don't ever drive high. It's stupid and irresponsible and illegal. But if you're in a state that has a per se DUID threshold for THC, meaning the equipment in your state at the time the law was passed could test to a certain amount. And that's how those laws are established. So you may have a 5 nanogram limit in your state. You may have a 10 nanogram limit in your state. Those are two of the most common. The reason why it's that amount is because that's all your equipment could test down to when those laws were passed. They're not based in any sort of science. Those laws should absolutely be, as you say, Chris, deleted. But you are able to prosecute DUID for cannabis reasonably. And you don't need special breathalyzers for that or made up nanogram limits to do so. And that's fine, because it shouldn't be legal to drive impaired for any reason. Hey, Woodyard, good to see you. Happy Friday. Hey, James. Welcome back. Good to see you. Hey, everyone who just joined us on Instagram. Let's see you. Let me know where you're watching from. I see you, James. All right, so that's what's going on with the rescheduling hearing. I saw a lot of comments, a lot of questions on Facebook about rescheduling versus descheduling this week. Happy to talk about that. If you have questions, now's the time to drop those in the comments if you want to hear more about rescheduling versus descheduling. Let's go on to some legislative type action that happened this week. California's Governor Newsom signed a few bills, and California is one of the few states that, permits and licenses social consumption lounges. So places where people can lawfully go to consume cannabis in an indoor establishment, just like one may be able to do with alcohol. This legislation will allow these, and these are like state licensed cannabis consumption venues, will allow them to serve food, just food, not infused food. Will let them serve regular food to people. Imagine going somewhere wanting to enjoy food. How novel. They'll be allowed to do so. The new law takes effect on January 1st. Oh, that's the wrong date, Paul. It's 2025. January 1, 2025. Ignore what it says there. I'm going to go fix that news release. It will also allow them to sell tickets for live events. So if they wanted to have a concert or something at their consumption venue, they'll be allowed to do that. So good news in California. Bad news in Arkansas. James, I don't know what that means. There's a gas cloud over you, a chlorine gas cloud. I don't know how that happens, but it sounds awful. Hello from Georgia. Odd luck. Hello. Good to see you. Okay, in Arkansas, there's a group in Arkansas that's been trying to get a medical cannabis expansion initiative qualified for the November ballot. And in fact, some ballots have already been printed with the initiative on them. However, election officials came back this week and were like, no, you didn't qualify. These signatures aren't valid. And it's a real technical reason why they've decided these signatures don't qualify. They originally they hadn't qualified. They had given them extra time. I mean, it's a prescribed amount of extra time. They had given them some time to make up the difference, and they thought they more than made up the difference. And then the election officials came back and said, no, because of this technicality, we've decided that this initiative doesn't qualify. And then the people behind the initiative filed a lawsuit. I mean, like, as they should. And the lawsuit alleges that election officials arbitrarily excluded an estimated 20,000 signatures from registered voters. And they've asked the court to, take a look at this and take expedited action, particularly since this measure is already pending. I think there was a little bit more movement on this yesterday, where they've agreed to expedite it. So we'll see how that turns out in Arkansas. Hey Diff on Instagram is asking, in Florida, can I have an out-of-state caregiver? Caregiver means different things in different states, and so do you mean, can you have someone grow cannabis for you in another state and then bring it to Florida? Because that answer is no for every state. It's not permissible in the United States to transport any cannabis across any state lines. Any cannabis, any state lines, U.S. territories, whatever. Not legal in the United States. It's considered interstate drug trafficking because under federal law, marijuana is still considered a Schedule I drug. So you ask me if you have more, if that didn't answer your question, let me know. Generally, the answer is no. There's a lab on fire, James. Whoo, that's so okay. Yikes. What can make it legal? Thanks for asking. Diff on Instagram asks, what can make it legal, meaning legal to move cannabis across state lines? That would be the end of federal prohibition. That's how we would get to a point like that. So you can, have interstate commerce and things like that. In order to, federal legalization is a term we hear a lot. That's sort of a basic way to describe it. But really what it means is to remove marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substances Act altogether. Just like alcohol and tobacco are not scheduled. Remove marijuana from the Federal Controlled Substances Act altogether. This is something that has to be done by Congress. It requires legislation to be passed in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, and then those bills to be reconciled, agreed upon, and put on the president's desk for signature. That's how that works. That's what descheduling looks like. That's what federal legalization, federal decriminalization, people like to call it, all these different things, ending prohibition. That's how it works. What about rescheduling? Thanks for asking, Diff. Rescheduling is not going to have any impact on the illegality of cannabis between the state and federal levels, right? So under Schedule I, all of these state regulatory models, whether it's adult use or medical. If your state is regulating medical and or adult use, it is doing so in conflict with federal law, while marijuana is under Schedule 1. Now, if marijuana were Schedule 3, it would still be completely in conflict with federal law. This rescheduling process is about specifically botanical cannabis, and now the FDA regulates prescription medications. The FDA is not going to approve for sale botanical cannabis as a prescription drug. That is not how the process for approving prescription drugs does not accommodate a plant. It's just not how it works. So what's the impact going to be for consumers? Largely nothing. From a legality standpoint, nothing. From a research standpoint, nothing. Now, if you want to like back way up and say, oh, what about research? Because we keep seeing this, oh, we're going to expand research. My first question is, how's that? Because all of the restrictions right now on cannabis research, which does not stop people from doing research, by the way. It's one of the most researched substances on earth. But all of the restrictions in place in the United States at the federal level that prevent or inhibit research on cannabis are specific to cannabis. And in fact, most of them predate marijuana ever being scheduled. So we're descheduling, moving to Schedule 3 does not change that. Now, is it easier to get a Schedule 3 license for a lab or for a researcher than a Schedule 1 license? Sure. But that's not, I don't think that's what people are saying when they say, oh, it's going to make research so much easier. It's going to open up research. It's not. Also, if you're saying that, I don't know. If you're pretending to be interested in research, please understand the amount of research there is on cannabis right now. Go to PubMed, it's free. Do a quick search on PubMed. You're going to find over 50,000 entries on cannabis and its constituents. That's a lot. Your average FDA-approved prescription drug goes through less than 2 clinical trials before it goes into your body. So that's where we are. Thank you for asking about rescheduling. What is MMTC? Diff, can you explain that? Tell me what that is. Anyhow, ending prohibition is how that works. I'm going to check out some of your other comments. Sorry, I have to look at 2 different screens to see Instagram, to see everybody else's comments. So, hey, Smart and Safe Florida just joined us. Glad to see you all here. We had a big conversation about Yes on 3 earlier in the broadcast. Thanks for joining us. Odd Luck wants us to get into Georgia more. We do have a chapter in Georgia, Peachtree NORML. And Odd Luck, I can show you a comment. It says, y'all should get into Georgia stronger. If Georgia's finally comes to the 21st century and at least gets a decent medical cannabis law on the books, the other southern states will fall into line. So I don't think that Georgia changing its laws would be particularly influential to other states. If they wanted to be influenced, they would have been influenced by the big squeeze, which is Virginia and Florida going, everyone in between, what are you doing? Interestingly enough, Georgia and Virginia and Texas all started out with the exact same really limited licensure model pitched to their, at the time in Virginia, conservative controlled, and the other states conservative controlled legislatures, and they took it and ran with it. Well, at least we did. We went from this limited licensure, limited access model in 2016 to adult use in 2021. So you can do it. But Georgia and Texas are really great examples of where medical cannabis is still your best step forward. And you have programs, but they can be significantly expanded. And let me tell you this, you do not have to come, running in there with this giant bill that's like, I want all these things and I want them now. You can say, oh, hey, look at this program. So glad you did that. This is great. We're really serving patients. We could serve a few more patients if we did just this tiny little tweak. And it's okay to find those little ways to take steps forward. There's still significant improvements for patients, for patient access. They add up. And that's exactly the method that was used in Virginia. to get very quickly from single condition affirmative defense for CBD to adult use in not a lot of time. So yeah, like Georgia and Texas could be doing that. Hi, Melissa. I'm sorry you missed whatever was already said. You can always rewatch this show on NORML's YouTube. It also stays on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. It won't stay on Instagram, but you can find it anytime on our YouTube. But thanks for joining us. Ryan, tell me more. Ryan on Instagram says Colorado microbial testing needs more research backing these standards. Tell me more. Tell me what you mean. Do you think it should be more stringent? Do you think it should be more permissive? I mean, as a consumer focused organization, our priority would be to ensure that products are safe for consumers. So I want to hear your thoughts, Ryan. Are they too strict or not strict enough? Hey, Melissa, I see your question. Melissa Nicole asks on Instagram if there's any chance for non-social equity companies being able to establish adult use businesses once Virginia moves forward, or will it only be social equity? No, there has never been an intent in Virginia's legislative process to restrict applications to any particular type of business. So when adult use happens, when we finally do see licensing for adult use in Virginia, which hopefully would happen in the 2026 General Assembly, it's the first real opportunity Virginia will have to do so. I do not have any reason to believe that you would not see opportunity for a number of types of businesses. And right now, the intent has been to make sure that whatever size business you have, let's say there are tiers to support that. So a small business that's trying to enter should be able to do so at a lower price point. If it's what Virginia previously would have called social equity business, they're under this current administration, they wouldn't call it that. Under the next administration, they may go back to calling it that, but that those type of qualifying businesses would have access to low cost, no cost, and to capital through the Cannabis Equity Reinvestment Fund. So those are the sort of things that I think that's still a path Virginia's on. Thank you, Ryan, on Instagram for providing your clarification around the statement for microbial testing in Colorado. Ryan adds California allows for 100,000 CFUs, where Colorado only allows for 10,000. Okay, you also don't believe that these labs should be allowed to hand count their dishes due to human error. All labs should have computers scan the dishes to ensure accuracy. And I think, Ryan, you are demonstrating right here what can be very concerning about the lack of regulatory oversight on cannabis testing laboratories in the US. Some states don't even mandate testing. Gross. Some states don't mandate third-party testing. Wild. Wild. We are working on our state we have a better name for it than that, but we do a report annually that has sort of summarizes the regulations in each state, so you can states that are regulating, so you can take a look and sort of do a comparison. And I hope you'll take a look at that when it comes out, Ryan. Melissa, you're welcome. Thanks for joining. James, I hope you're safe wherever you are. This sounds terrible. Hi, Sherry. Happy Friday. Good to see you back. Ben, Ben says breaking new Bigfoot footage. Mitch, let's talk about this for a second. Mitch asks if cannabis is getting rescheduled from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, and if so, do you know when? So we're very much of the opinion at NORML that it is likely, more likely than not, that the move happens from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. We are of the opinion that this rescheduling process has sufficiently demonstrated that cannabis does not belong in Schedule 1. It does not meet the criteria for Schedule 2. Therefore, it could be moved to Schedule 3. And that's what the rescheduling process is about. It is a very prescribed process. It is not a, come in and demand descheduling, so we'll just do that. It's not on the table. It's not part of this very specific prescribed process. It is, does marijuana meet the scheduling criteria where it is now? And HHS went through and looked at the different criteria, and they said, no, it does not meet Schedule 1 criteria. No, it does not meet Schedule 2 criteria. Therefore, we say Schedule 3. That's how they're kind of doing these measurements. And, we're very much of the opinion that it is more likely that it will move to Schedule 3. Now, when we have no idea, and it's entirely possible that the election, the results of the election could impact the timeline for this process. Right now, you have an administration that wants to do it. We could end up with an administration that doesn't want to do it and could try to slow walk it. There have been numerous rescheduling attempts before. They have often been multi-year processes. So your guess is as good as mine. It won't be there the whole way. Also remember, it does not, for consumers, it doesn't really have any impact. Hopefully, a move to Schedule 3 would allow existing state licensed cannabis operators to take standard business tax deductions. And if they're able to do that, then they're able to operate at a lower cost, and hopefully consumers would see lower prices. It's our biggest hope for consumers out of a move to Schedule 3. Otherwise, it doesn't really do anything it's historic, don't get me wrong. It is incredible. It is historic. It also ends that, those just painful conversations that you might get trapped in, especially in a legislative situation. Maybe you're testifying about why you want to legalize, medical cannabis or whatever in your state or expand it. And then you've got the, weird prohibitionist in line behind you, and they march up to the podium and they say, marijuana is a dangerous Schedule 1 drug. Won't it be fun when they can't say that anymore? I look forward to that because I'm tired of that nonsense. Why won't Thomas, I see your question now. Sorry, it takes me a minute to read all of these questions. Why won't the FDA approve botanical cannabis as a prescription drug? There are criteria for approving prescription drugs, and it has to do with consistency and the ability to replicate the product, the drug, consistently. And that's just not how plants work. Like, these plants don't come out exactly the same every single time. They vary. There is always a variation in the cannabinoid profile. Also, FDA does not approve things that you set on fire and inhale. Now, does FDA approve cannabis-derived drugs? Yeah, absolutely. You can get what we all know is the brand name Marinol, but the generic is dronabinol, which is 100% pure synthetic THC in a capsule. It's also available as a liquid preparation. These are both just Schedule 3 drugs. And you may be saying, yeah, well, that's synthetic, JM. What about botanical? Thanks for asking. So there's a product called Epidiolex. That's a CBD preparation that's derived from plants. It's just an extraction from plants. I mean, it also has preservatives in it and strawberry flavoring that causes gastrointestinal disorders, but that's another story altogether. Epidiolex is an FDA-approved medication. So yes, we should all be so fortunate as to one day have the luxury of choosing between, pharmaceuticalized cannabinoids at CVS, craft cannabis at the boutique dispensary, and Marlboro Greens at the big box store, right? What a hardship that'll be. Hey, Tamara, I see you. Hi, Kellyanne in Pittsburgh. Welcome back. Hey, Adam. More permissive what? Hey, Chris. Welcome back. Other Chris. I told you, so we're going to have to call you from now on. The shadow knows that Pennsylvania should legalize it. Yeah, Pennsylvania. We have some action alerts on our Take Action page, normal.org/act. Click on Pennsylvania and you'll see the action alert for Pennsylvania. Absolutely. There's great momentum around this issue in Pennsylvania. Thanks, Adam, for sharing the video about decontamination and consumer safety and transparency. I'm going to check that out. Odd luck, I see your comments, and I know. Working on it. John asks, how quickly can it go from Schedule 3 to descheduled? Thanks, John. I like this question. Okay, so here's the thing. These are different tracks. Like if you think about the way the government operates, like some things require this track and others require this track, right? So the Schedule 3, the rescheduling process that's underway right now is prescribed by law. Like it has to happen a certain way. And it's very narrow and it's specific, and the ability to have hearings, all of this, public comment, that's all part of the way it has to happen, and that's what's happening. Descheduling can happen, but it has to happen by Congress, which is entirely separate from this rescheduling process. They are not connected at all. So this is not an either-or scenario. If I left them out here with my keys. Okay, so here's the thing. Elections have consequences. And if we elect senators and representatives to Congress who don't want to remove marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act, it's a lot harder. It's impossible to do it. And that's where we are right now. There's been legislation passed multiple times in the U.S. House of Representatives that would have descheduled marijuana. So it's entirely up to us as Americans, right? We vote for the people in Congress. We have that choice. And if we are electing people who are not good on this policy choice, then we are not going to get it. So it's up to us. It's up to us to elect not only people to the Senate and to the U.S. House of Representatives who believe in any federal prohibition, but as well as a president who will sign a bill to end prohibition. Not a president who pays lip service on the campaign trail, a president who, if presented with a bill, would sign it. Okay. Love your question. Thank you. We can do it. It's literally up to us. James, I'm glad you're getting out of town. Great. Be safe, friend. Exactly. Christopher says Schedule 3 changes the tone of the rest of the legalization talk, and that is exactly what I'm talking about there. Okay, Tamara's being funny. Tamara says, so tired of the cannabis prohibitionists. Because as a former teacher, Tamara loves when people misspell the word cannabis. And we may have had a few chuckles about that this week. Oh, look, someone got their feelings hurt because I exist on Instagram. I couldn't care less. I see your question. I'm sorry I don't get timestamps on Instagram, so I can't really tell exactly what we were talking about when you asked this question. But Two Buds on Instagram, you asked about an avenue for home growers to get products tested. I can see you're asking this on the Virginia stream. You can do that in Virginia right now. There are labs in Virginia that will test for people who are, their own personal grow. You can do that in Virginia right now. It's, just to get tested for potency is affordable. To do a full panel, if you're looking at contaminants and stuff like that, it's going to be a little more costly. It's going to be a lot more costly, but there are labs that will do that right now in Virginia. Chris, I see your question. Hold on a second. Yeah, right, Fusion? That's funny. Oh, okay. Chris is asking about trademarking. There are a lot of articles out there about cannabis IP and trademarks, and yes, it's possible. Yes, it's possible. Thanks to everyone who just joined us on Instagram. Okay, got it, Adam. Thank you. No, I think the more you dig in, the more we have to call you other Chris. Oh, Two Buds, you're in Alabama. Got it. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you have any labs down there in Alabama. Sorry. I can find out. Kellyanne, I'm so glad you brought this up. Okay, we heard really fantastic things about the lobby day in Pennsylvania. That was Tuesday. Thank you for reminding me. Kellyanne says we had a rally in Harrisburg on Tuesday. We went around and dropped off, and by rally, Kellyanne means lobby day. There was a gathering beforehand, right? But then you just did a lobby day. And Kellyanne goes on to say, we went around and dropped off a note to all of the Republican senators and representatives, letting them know that Trump is supporting cannabis in Florida. That's smart. That's effective, trying to gain some support. Yeah, great tactic, Kellyanne. Love that. I heard that you all had to respond pretty quickly given the weather situation in Pennsylvania. And hey, shout out to Jeff Reedy for being flexible and jumping into action and getting it done. We'd love to hear about our chapter is having really successful lobby days, and it sounds like you did. So thank you for being part of that. Never running for Congress. Bratty. Never. We do need a countdown. You can make a paper chain for that, Melissa. Okay. Waxy Brown asks this question. With hemp THC legal in the majority of states, is big marijuana in danger? I don't think so. Also, I don't really believe in the concept of big marijuana. Like, I get it. It's kind of cute to say that, right? Like, big pharma, big tobacco, big marijuana. But these cannabis companies, even ones that are multi-state operators, they are not anywhere on the same scale as the big industries that we traditionally talk about. They're paltry in comparison, very small. And once federal prohibition ends, and like no shade on those companies, good for you for knowing what you want to do. They started out small too, and they built themselves up into something. When federal prohibition ends, that's when people are going to find out what big means. Because companies like Constellation, huge company, huge conglomerate corporation, they've been experimenting with cannabis regulation in countries where it's legal. So no, I don't. I mean, yes, I think I don't think the industry as a whole, the legal regulated cannabis industry as a whole, is in danger because of this unregulated hemp products that are out there. I think that industry is in danger because it was trying to operate in what they perceived to be loopholes, and states are closing those. California was the one that most recently made news doing so. So, I mean, really, at the end of the day, these are cannabinoid products, and they should all be regulated the same way, right? Whether your need for consumer safety is not determined by the amount of THC in a product. If it's a pre-roll that's hemp, and it's a pre-roll that's cannabis, you still set them both on fire and inhale them. And the amount of THC isn't what determines your need for that product to be safe. Anyhow. So no, that's my thought on that. Samuel, someone else was just talking to me about the violent femme show. That's crazy. Why do I know so many people that are going to that? Oh, I know, because I'm this age. Contact go. Oh, look, I love that you're called the Cole Memo. It cracks me up every time. And I'm really glad that you're able to join us today. Oh, okay. Yes, there's so much that has been written about cannabis IP. Just a quick Google. Google's your friend. Thank you. Oh, Melissa, thank you for being a part of that lobby day. I really do appreciate it. Kellyanne, sorry, I'm looking at two comments at the same time. Kellyanne, thank you for taking part in that lobby day, even though it was boring. Ben, thanks. It's just like it's not what we do here. We're a consumer organization, but people want to ask us about that stuff all the time. Oh, Two Buds, thank you for clarifying that your question was about more on a national basis when it comes to patients getting products, or people who are allowed to cultivate for personal use being able to get their products tested. Again, it's largely state by state. That's where labs have to be established. Oh, and a follow-up question from Two Buds about the sadly named Doobie Act. Very unfortunately named Doobie Act. We thought we were done with these stupid names, but I guess we're not. It's not cute. It makes it harder to do real work. But Two Buds goes on to ask, with the Doobie Act, do we see more progress being made due to more like-minded individuals being able to get government jobs? I mean, if it passed, it would be helpful. It would prohibit the use of past cannabis consumption from it would prohibit the use of past cannabis consumption as a disqualifier for federal jobs and security clearances. That's what it would do. It would be an improvement if that act were passed. Why is our organization constantly pushing? Should we not? Because that's our mission, to ensure that consumers have access to products that are safe, convenient, and affordable. Let's legalize it now and fix it later. Yes, I mean, we agree. Yes, like it's never a one and done. Like if you've been paying attention, as I'm sure you have, read the whole thing. I see. Why is your organization constantly pushing? Let's legalize now and fix it later when it takes many, many years to fix it later? Question mark, question mark. I can see the whole thing. Why are we constantly pushing? It's literally what we're here to do. National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, all of the laws. Even if a state does legalize, it doesn't automatically undo all of the terrible cannabis policies that exist in the state. So there could be a number of areas of code, parental rights, housing rights, education rights, healthcare access rights. I'm sure I missed it. Tons of things, educational opportunities that are impacted by prohibition. The roots of prohibition run deep, and they've made their way into all sorts of different areas of code that do not immediately get repealed or remediated just by saying legalization. And consumers still deserve representation during the political process. We represent consumers in the political process. Why not do this from the beginning? I don't know. Y'all stop electing terrible people. If you elect terrible people to represent you, you will get terrible on cannabis policy. You will get terrible cannabis policy. That's the problem. Stop voting for people who suck on cannabis policy if you want better cannabis policies. Then, after you elect these people, you have to work with them to pass the policies that you want. And you have to be willing to move at the pace of the people that you have elected. It's not a one and done. Even if cannabis were legal at the federal level, legal in every single state for medical and adult use, you would still want to have an organization that represents the rights of you, a consumer. Corn is legal. Education's legal. We have bills for corn and education every single year because things evolve and we have to keep doing it. But yeah, absolutely. We could just legalize it. You all could just elect amazing people and we could legalize it in every state and at the federal level. And we'd still be here to represent the needs of consumers. It's not about pushing bad legalization. It's about moving forward. And you might not, the bill that's before you in whatever state you're in might not be perfect. It might not have everything you want. This is literally what I live and breathe every day. I work on bills that I'm like, I have to bite my tongue and go, okay. But I'm willing to do that because it ends the arrest or the discrimination against a lot of people. Pass legislation in Florida right now, you could pass Amendment 3, and 60,000 fewer people would be arrested for weed in that state. That's a significant impact. That would change the lives of tens of thousands of people. That's extraordinary. And just say, yeah, well, I don't like it because it doesn't do XYZ for me. Like, I get it. I have that experience all the time. I stood before a legislature at 11 o'clock at night arguing for a bill that gave it essentially a piece of paper to families who had children with epilepsy that said maybe you don't have to put them in jail. It didn't have any bearing on me, but it was going to change the lives of some people. And we full-throatedly said yes to that. And we said yes to that, and then we said yes to the next one, and we said yes to the next one. And in 6 years, we went from full prohibition to adult use legalization. So that's why you say yes to bills that aren't perfect, because you're moving forward and you're literally dragging the horses to the water. Like, okay, here it is. That's how you do it. Anyhow. Your euphemisms are so delightful, really helpful in the legislative process. But thanks for letting me know. Next to people are yes, yes. That would be okay. So Two Bud says is talking about the Doobie Act and asking about is well the comment says if I smoked a joint yesterday and got tested tomorrow, is that considered past use? May or may not be an ace in the hole. The name is unfortunate. However, it pays homage to the war on drugs 30, 40 years from now if passed. Yeah, so I'm sure that I'd have to open the bill and look at it. I suspect there was a timeline. There's a prescribed amount of time that defines what past use is. So even there's disqualifying questions. We're not even talking about like drug testing. We're talking about the question like, have you ever used marijuana? Is disqualifying people in certain jobs and clearances. So, and again, if if that act were passed, it would help these many more people qualify for these types of employment or for clearances, and that's significant. Thank you. I'm just going to put that up there. Thank you, Fusion. Left-handed cigarette. Is that why is that why you pass the Dutchie on the left-hand side? Okay, I gotta catch up with some of your comments on. I'm not looking at Instagram right now. Sorry, Instagram. I'm gonna get you in a second. I don't know, Cole Memo, if you're asking me or if that's an internal conversation. It shows it out of. It's kind of out of context when I see your comment. So if you're asking me a question about loopholes, ask it again so I can understand what I'm answering. Thank you. Woodyard, I think that's really interesting that you point that out because there are multiple studies out there that affirm what you're saying. Woodyard says violent crime is down, domestic crime is down. I think more states that legalize it will continue to drop. There are a number of studies out there that show reductions in crime types when cannabis is legalized. And there's a number of factors that go into that, not only from law enforcement being able to focus on crime instead of weed, but also related to reductions in property crimes and things like that when a retail facility goes into an area because they are typically required to have so much extra lighting and surveillance and security presence that it reduces crime in that neighborhood. iTunes into you. dummy, says smoking is unhealthy. There are other options to consume cannabis, which I believe will help people have a better understanding of the benefits of this medicine. Sure, people can consume cannabis however they want. However they want to consume it doesn't mean, other than like endangering the lives of other people. You don't need to go to jail for consuming cannabis responsibly. However that is, whether it's the healthiest way or the least healthy way. Thanks, Two Buds. I appreciate your comment. Yeah, look, I like this too, and I'm going to add on to what you said, Fusion. Fusion says, as far as candidates, a pro-cannabis pledge is always preferable to harmful policy proposals. Yes, and when we are asking our candidates, our electeds about their positions on cannabis policy, let's be smart about the questions that we are asking. Because sometimes we ask questions that are well-intended, but give them an easy out. Do you support legalization? Well, this is a yes or no. You're going to say, sure. And then the bill is before them. They go, oh, well, I support legalization. I just don't like this version of it. Oh, right, whatever. So you want to ask them, if a bill were before you that would legalize the adult use of cannabis in insert state here, would you vote yes or no? And then they may say, well, I'd have to see it. And then you could say, I understand that. I would want to review a bill thoroughly before I voted on it. Can you tell me what would be a deal breaker for you? Can you tell me what would be a non-starter for you in an adult use measure? Can you work with me to make sure that that isn't included, or this thing is included, or whatever? See, we don't want lame, easy answers. We want real answers. Also, you can check out our voter guide at vote.normal.org and see where the candidates on your ballot stand on cannabis policy. Thank you, Tamara, for reminding everyone about the Virginia Cannabis Conference, which will be in January. We should know early next week what those dates are. Oh, okay. Thank you, Cole Memo. Cole Memo says, you mentioned the Farm Bill is a loophole. Is the Cole Memo a loophole that allows states to sell, I think you know what you're asking here, federally illegal cannabis? Yes. Well, it wasn't so much a loophole as it was a direction to take a hands-off approach. If a state is, when the Cole Memo was in effect, even though technically we're operating again like it is in effect. Remember, under the Trump administration, the Cole Memo was rescinded. That wasn't that long ago now, was it? It wasn't that long ago that someone who now says he supports legalization was in office and appointed a crazy little demon boy attorney general, and he rescinded the Cole Memo. The Cole Memo says, directs Department of Justice to take a hands-off approach if a state is, legalizing cannabis, is following their own laws about cannabis. As long as they're not doing anything terrible, they're going to take a hands-off approach. Now, if it's medical cannabis program in a state, they're actually, Department of Justice is actually prohibited from meddling, we'll say, by a budget writer that has to be passed every year. Again, that's specific to medical cannabis. Thank you, Laurel. Thank you. Thank you, Morbid. I can just, there's this very specific picture of Jeff Sessions that we used, and it was like around Halloween, and we made the picture red so he kind of looked like a devil. You're right, Prohibition. You're right, Morbid. prohibition is the deal breaker. Please only call him Demon Boy from now on. I'm glad he lost his primary too. Oh, Tamara, I do know what senator you're talking about. Bless his heart. What did we do? I really don't know what you're talking about, Jack. I don't disagree with you that medical legalization opened the door for adult use legalization. I believe that wholeheartedly. It's still, and that's still the reality in many parts of the country where they haven't even adopted medical. They're miles away from adult use, and what we would say to them is work on medical. So I'm really not. Also, I was in like middle and high school in the 80s, so I don't really know. What's your beef? Yes, guidance. The Cole memo was guidance. It was explicitly guidance. Yes, that's the whole point of the memo. Thank you, Christopher. I don't want them to write a bill, Melissa. Okay, let me give you a little bit. Hey, Lawrence, I see you on Instagram asking about trucking industry. Have not heard anything. We're talking about saliva testing, right? So there was some federal action that essentially provides for additional types of testing for DOJ, no, for DOT licenses, for CDLs, the ability to use saliva tests instead of just traditional urine testing. I haven't read anything about further movement on that. Thank you for remembering and asking again. I'm glad we're breaking into a second 420 bracket for you. The Cole memo. Okay, I want to give you the rest of these newses, and then I want to go home because I have a raging headache. Okay, thanks. California governor, Arkansas, DEA, we did that. Here's one. This is one of the stories where I say, oh, hey, look, here we are. Have we heard this song before? Let's sing it one more time. This time a clinical trial. So a clinical trial was done, and the results of this clinical trial highlight that CBD, specifically CBD, has the potential to be a novel treatment for psychosis. This clinical trial looked at symptoms in individuals who are at a clinically high risk for psychosis, and CBD did mitigate the symptoms these patients were experiencing, and that's what investigators concluded. I am taking Tylenol, Chris, because I'm allergic to NSAIDs, and this is full of caffeinated beverage, and it's not helping. It's because of the storm. Speaking of pain, God bless it. Speaking of pain, there was a survey done, and this is published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, Network Open. So not some fly-by-night nonsense. Just to be clear, there was a survey done, and the majority of pain physicians surveyed did support the federal legalization of medical cannabis. This was 59% of pain physicians surveyed, and 71% of chronic pain patients who were surveyed supported federal legalization of medical cannabis. I will think about all of these recommendations for my headache that you all are providing. Thank you so much. And then one last and super ick story. Okay, Rolling Stone. There's an article that's published in Rolling Stone, and there's a year-long investigation that was done. And in what they conclude is that tens of thousands of expectant parents, people who are going to give birth to children, uh, pregnant people, tens of thousands of them nationwide, face investigations from Child Protective Services for marijuana use, and they there was far more allegations associated with claims of marijuana use as opposed to claims of alcohol or tobacco use. And this is even where cannabis is legal. So to this earlier conversation about, I go, whatever, what does NORML do, or whatever the person asks, like, people are being drug tested when they give birth, and then CPS is coming in and trying to take their kids. And this is in states also where cannabis is legal. Those laws don't fix themselves. This is kind of a niche interest when it comes to policy work, and that's what we do. This is a policy that I worked on in Virginia for the past 2 years. And in Virginia, we don't necessarily see allegations of marijuana use frequently triggering CPS investigations. In Virginia, what we see is people losing their children in custody litigation related to claims of cannabis use, because in Virginia, we operate under best interest of the child, which is not defined at all. So you could be disabled, and the person you're divorcing might not be disabled. And according to one of our most senior senators in Virginia, who's also an attorney, he says, oh, well, so then it would be in the best interest of the child to be with the parent that's not disabled. How's that? Anyhow, this happens in lots of states. It just happens to be happening where I live also. So we did pass a legislation. We passed a bill. We passed 2 bills that would have provided guidance to the courts, just guidance to the courts and guidance to CPS as to how and when cannabis use would be an acceptable criteria, and the governor vetoed it. Keep doing that work, friends. Audacious says on Instagram, I say on Instagram because I cannot show Instagram comments in this platform. It doesn't let us. It only lets me show Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Sometimes LinkedIn pops up here. But this one does say, this person on Instagram says, I'm in Massachusetts and was asked to take a drug test before I was admitted to give birth. I left and waited for the next shift to start. Wow. And wow. Was that effective? Was the next person that you saw like less ick? For anyone who doesn't know, in Massachusetts, cannabis is legal for both medical and adult use. Maya, yes. Yes. Hi. Not a lot of us. Okay, yeah. I see that, Christopher. Oh, okay. So Audacious can't answer my question and said, I've worked in the industry for 9 years, and to think that Saphir is crazy. Agreed. I just knew how to answer the question the second time. That's, how terrifying. All right, did we do all the news? We did all the news. It is 5:15. I need to go home. Do I have any events to tell you about? Yes, I have some events to tell you about. Listen, early voting is underway around the country. Please vote. Please find out when and where you can vote in your state. and check out our voter guide. Christopher, check out your voter guide, our voter guide, vote.normal.org. It's called Smoke the Vote, so you know how to vote when you go to the ballot box. If you like this show, thank you. We try to do it every Friday. However, our Florida chapter, Suncoast NORML, does the rotation on YouTube, streams live Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern. You can find them on YouTube at Suncoast NORML. Next week, the Virginia Cannabis Control Authority Board of Directors will be meeting October 9th at 1 p.m. You can watch this. We use like WebEx or Zoom or something in Virginia, so you can get in the meeting and watch it. It's not really live streamed, but you can watch that. If you're a patient in Virginia, I recommend watching, because the CCA will be presenting, the CCA staff will be presenting to the board of directors the draft regulations for the medical cannabis program. When CCA took over the program from Board of Pharmacy, they were statutorily required to essentially adopt the exact same BOP regulations. They've now sort of taken their approach to it and said, here's what we'd like to do with regulations. I definitely think if you're a patient in Virginia, I encourage you to tune in and watch that, and specifically pay attention to the delivery component. I'm generally satisfied with where the draft regulations are now. I have some concerns about the delivery language. We intend to focus on that a little bit more with CCA. Thanks, Audacious, for joining us. I appreciate it. Christopher, those questions are too much. That's like implying a lot of stuff. You gotta tone that down, my dude. Okay, so the question Christopher wants to ask me is, what is my favorite type of cannabis? My favorite type is legal cannabis. It's what we do here at NORML. We legalize it. And thank you to all of you for joining us and helping us do that work. You can join us in Key West this December for the NORML Key West Legal Seminar, NORML Key West Legal Seminar, December 5 through 7 at the Pure House Resort and Spa. Come hang out with me, Keith, and Paul in Key West. If you're an attorney, our legal seminars are fully accredited in every state that requires CLEs for practicing attorneys. If you don't need those CLEs or you're not an attorney, good news, we have got your back with a discounted rate. So it's a win-win. Our legal seminars are not just for attorneys, so if you're not one, feel free to join us and have a great time and connect with legal experts across the country who can definitely help you in your state do whatever policy work you are looking to do. All right, everyone. I love that Fusion says, I'm voting this year no matter what. I'll walk there in 115-degree weather, raining with the flu if I have to. I love it. I love that dedication. Yeah, everyone make your plan to vote. Make sure everyone you know and love has made their plan to vote as well. Hey, make sure you hit that like, follow, or subscribe button, whatever button you have on the platform you're watching on. Hit that so that you never miss when NORML goes live. Our plan is to do this again next Friday. It's generally when we do this show. And I'd love to see you all back here. This has been a real blast hanging out with you. I love answering your questions. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. And as always, I'll see you back here next time. Bye-bye. Maybe bye. Let's see. Okay, see you. Bye.